Welcome to episode 21 of Father and Son Watch Horror Movies podcast. I am your co-host, the Father, also known as Pastor Matt, aka Matt Rawlings, and we're finishing up our run through George Romero's Dead films for Halloween, and to do that, I need my trusty co-host.
Jackson, the son, and hey, is that a zombie? I guess I better get my camera out to record my friend dying.
You're a filmmaker. You'd be tempted. We are a spoiler podcast. We spoil the movies we discuss, so be warned. So before we get to both Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead, what have you been watching this week, buddy, on our build-up to Halloween?
Too many movies. Well, let's see. I tuned into Joe Bob Briggs hosting his, I guess it's not a Halloween marathon, but I guess it technically was, based on the movies he was showing. But a lot of Hammer movies. I did a top 10 Hammer movies video on YouTube, so in preparation for that,
I saw that. It was excellent, yeah.
Yeah, so I spent all day yesterday working on that and watching Hammer movies like Quatermass and The Pit and The Curse of the Werewolf. Fantastic movies.
Oliver Reed, yeah.
Yep. And I've been watching a lot of Romero Dead movies, Survival of the Dead, and I guess I'm spoiling it now, but you know, the two remaining Living Dead,
Survival of the Dead, yeah.
Which I have strange opinions on that I think most people wouldn't agree with, but I'm excited to talk about that. I saw the third Candyman movie. Oh boy.
Oh, did you?
Worst movie I think I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah, did not like that. Poor Tony Todd.
I didn't love the second one, but and of course I love the first one, but yeah, I've seen the second one. I don't think I've seen the third one.
It's interesting. It's more like a straight up slasher and less psychological.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I watched Joe Bob's Halloween Hootenanny as well, or at least I made it through two of the movies before I conked out. I know you and I were messaging back and forth while we were watching it. I think at first I was at least a little disappointed that he was doing a Halloween marathon because I thought he was going to do a deep dive into something else. But then it turned out to be really cool, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had some interesting factoids that I didn't know, like the fact I was talking to you about this, the fact that Deborah Hill possibly hasn't seen Halloween in a while because she's misremembering what's in the movie.
Yeah, Joe Bob. I'm sure he got some flack for it, saying that there's no way Halloween is a feminist movie like Deborah Hill claimed, because Deborah Hill claimed there was no nudity in it. That's wrong. Deborah Hill claimed that Jamie Lee Curtis's character Laurie Strode was never scared in it. That's obviously wrong.
Yep, and she claimed that there wasn't a lot of violence against women, which is totally wrong.
It's mainly against women, isn't it?
Yep. There's one man dies, and I guess if you count the mechanic too, but yeah, the babysitter murders, and all the babysitters are girls. So, well,
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. Well, I watched Haunt on Shudder.
Yes.
The new movie written and directed by the guys who wrote A Quiet Place and a buddies of Justin Beam. And I was kind of shocked when I went online to see how polarizing the movie has been, because I really enjoyed it. And
yes, I did too. I loved it, and I saw reviews that were like 2 stars, and I was like, "What is this?" I had fun. I mean, the characters are stupid, but you wouldn't have a movie if you didn't have stupid characters. And people were saying it's a little repetitive, and I agree with that. But I really love the ending and the big twist that comes with that.
Yeah, I did too. I thought it was a lot of fun, a throwback slasher, and I saw a lot of people saying, "Well, but Funhouse was better," or "Hellfest was better," and I thought, "What? But it's its own movie." I mean, I don't see anybody, and I'm not trying to pick a fight. I don't see anybody going, we've seen this before with 80s slashers. Well, we've seen almost all of it with 80s slashers. That doesn't mean we don't love our 80s slashers. I mean,
right.
We cut our slashers a lot of slack, in my opinion. Like, I love The Prowler, even though, let's face it, the acting's not exactly top notch in The Prowler. It's thanks largely to Tom Savini's effects, but I don't see that. So we've had Hellfest, we've had Bloodfest, we had many moons ago, we had, Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse, but in and of itself, just watching for an hour and a half a throwback slasher, I just thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and there were a lot of really interesting set pieces, I thought, where they were trying to think of ways to incorporate this fun house and make it, terrifying. this isn't a spoiler, but there's a moment with a tunnel that I thought was really
Yeah.
scary, with the ends being shut off and the bottoms falling out, and that's a really cool scene. Um, just lots of really cool, like you could tell that they were just having fun trying to design sets that would be scary, and it's kind of like they were designing their own fun house in a way, their own haunt, and that's
Yeah.
interesting to me that the art of filmmaking isn't that far off from the art of making a haunted house.
No, which is why I guess that Rob Zombie and others have, always get into it. But I thought that there were some things, I won't get into it because I don't want to spoil Haunt, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who haven't seen it yet. It's streaming on Shudder, but I I like that there's an aspect to it that they don't explain,
Mhm.
and I
I know
I
what you
like
mean.
that in this.
Kinda
Yeah.
maybe a little bit sci-fi.
Yeah, I guess. I didn't know. I didn't know if there was some
Mhm.
kind of cultic thing going on, plastic surgery. I don't know, but it was, to me, I thought it was cool that they didn't explain it. They just let it go. I thought that was
Mhm.
really cool.
Yep, and I feel like that's a throwback to the '80s slashers, like, they wouldn't always have an explanation for why the killer looks like a monster, or whatever, but, um, yeah, it's interesting, and I feel like the characters are a little dull, but that's how if you really wanna recreate '80s slashers, that's how you do it. Much as I love, movies like The Burning, I wasn't exactly invested in what the characters were doing, or Madman, I'm more interested in what
Oh,
Madman Mars
Madman.
is doing. Beware the Madman Mars, but that's a whole 'nother story.
I do love Madman. I saw Big
It's a
Bill
gr
just wrote a review for HNP on that. I love it, even though it's ridiculous. Some of the worst
Mhm.
music in a slasher ever.
His theme song has lyrics. That's hilarious to
Oh,
me.
man.
There's a scene in the movie that's supposed to be terrifying. It's just a folk song.
It is. Yeah, it's a folk song from the '80s when folk was dead. So, yeah,
Mhm.
that's pretty funny. So, all right. So anything else you've been watching that you wanna talk about, or so we
Ah,
move on?
just a lot of crap, really. I'm more excited to talk about our main features for this episode.
All righty. Well, let's get to it. So let's begin our wrap up of Romero's Dead movies with his only found footage film from 2008. I know some list as 2007, but it really got wide release in 2008, and that is Diary of the Dead.
Two news agencies are reporting accounts of the dead returning to life.
From legendary filmmaker George A. Romero
Yeah, there's an army up there.
comes his groundbreaking new vision
From now on, everyone who dies is gonna come back.
of the beginning of the end.
All that's left is to record what's happening.
George A. Romero's Diary of the Dead.
I think it's time we left this place.
So, Diary of the Dead, it's been a while since I've seen it, maybe 11 years since I've seen it, but the IMDb plot synopsis says a group of young film students run into real life zombies while filming a horror movie of their own, which is fairly accurate, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's not really the focus of the movie. Like the them making their own movie. I think that's in the first 30 seconds to just kind of explain what they're filming. But yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate.
Well, then the guy decides that because he was making a horror movie and he
Sure.
said he wants to be a documentary
Sort of,
filmmaker. So
sort
he
of
kind of
like
shifts to that.
right. What I was thinking when I saw that is it's sort of like what you're supposed to believe with the first part of One Cut of the Dead. It kind of reminded me of that. This director who's taking full advantage of the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. And something tells me that when we do our top 10 list in January, we will be talking about One Cut
Yeah.
of the Dead, I think,
Yep.
which is also streaming on Shudder, and people should definitely check out. And I think you'll agree with me, stick past the 30-minute mark.
Oh yeah. It's there's a reason for it. I mean, you can't just cut that part out of the movie, but yeah, it definitely picks up after that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to Diary of the Dead, the plot is really that you've got some students from University of Pittsburgh. They're making a movie. They've got a faculty advisor there. They're making a mummy movie of all things in 2007. And the zombie apocalypse breaks out, and they decide to try to jump into an RV and try to get cross country to a friend's house. And of course, they encounter everything you would imagine between there and then from the zombie apocalypse, while the wannabe documentary filmmaker who was directing the horror film decides that he wants to make a documentary filmmaker of the zombie apocalypse. So that's what's going on now. This, of course, is really because we could have, I guess, because I'd forgotten about this, but we could have wrapped this up with Land of the Dead, because this is really kind of an alt control delete. This is kind of a restart for Romero,
Mhm.
right?
Maybe. I would see it less as a reboot or a remake and more of like another story from the beginning of the apocalypse. And yeah, what we were talking about last week with Land of the Dead is that technology is different than it was, with Night of the Living Dead. But I don't know
Right.
that this is necessarily a complete reboot of the world. I think it's just another story from the first,
Well, I think
day,
he
the first
actually
outbreak.
said it was. I think
Oh,
Romero. I
okay.
may be
Well,
wrong.
there
I
you
may be
go.
wrong, but I may be wrong. But it seems like, because I rewatched it earlier in the week and rewatched a really bad special feature on it. But I think Romero said he was basically restarting with Diary of the Dead, and of course, when we get to Survival of the Dead, we see that it feeds right off of Diary of the Dead, right? I mean,
Right.
it's
And I think that might be the strongest evidence that it is a reboot because there's a direct sequel to it, which we don't usually see.
right. So you have these film students. They hit the road in the middle of the zombie apocalypse, apparently driving through back roads instead of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, where I've been many, many times. They hit the road. One commits suicide. We did say we spoiled this, or tries to commit suicide. They head to an abandoned hospital. Is that ever a good idea in a zombie apocalypse?
No. And you would think that since these people are horror movie filmmakers that they would have seen horror movies because it's never a good idea to when you see a shadow behind a veil to be like, "Huh, I wonder what's behind there. Oh, a
Well,
zombie?
yeah,
Who would have
they go
guessed?"
like, "Oh, doctor, nurse,"
Yeah.
which, I mean,
"Nurse,
it's like,
doctor?"
it's like a bad slasher where you walk
Yeah.
outside. Todd, Tim, John.
Yeah. "Let me go
Um,
into the woods after you. Are those footsteps I hear? Let me go out there."
yeah, and so they continue running zombies. They mistake for people, and did you think they were stupid?
Yeah.
You did,
Not
just
only did I
no hesitation. Just, yeah, they're stupid.
Yeah, the zombies are smarter. And I think we see that, don't we? I mean, the zombies are smarter than the people, which is always a good sign.
I did like some of the things they did on the way, like in the hospital. I like the attempted kill with the shock paddles.
Mhm.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Yes, one thing that I'll give to this movie is that, there's some creative kills, there's some creative set pieces. They utilize the found footage, um, they utilize it to a degree. I don't think it needed to be a found footage movie, and I'll talk about that more later because I've got some gripes with that, but, yeah, I think it's creative enough to hold your attention, but it's definitely not art.
We may disagree on that. We will see, but
Okay.
I do like that. I like that once they finally get out of the hospital, and they go to the Amish farm. I love the deaf Amish dude who goes all Clint Eastwood with the TNT. That's fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, and that's another thing about this reboot, I guess, these 2 movies we'll be talking about. I feel like there's a lot more, like, comedy, like, a lot more set pieces that you're supposed to chuckle at and be like, "Oh, that's kinda ridiculous," you know what I mean?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
when we
yeah, yeah,
when
yeah.
we talk about Survival of the Dead, when you have the flaming head zombie who lights a
Right,
guy's cigarette with his head that's on fire. Just
right.
stuff like that, and I wonder if that's because Shaun of the Dead was, he enjoyed that so much, he was like, "Oh, so zombies are funny now." Um, because there is a lot more comedy in these movies, whereas before they were the zombies themselves were handled a lot more seriously.
Yeah, that's true. There is some forced comedy in both of these movies that we're covering. I
Mhm.
think more so in the second one than in
Okay.
this one. But so they get out of the Amish farm and they run into a group of African Americans at a gas station who have, instead of kind of fleeing to the hills, they've stayed put in their hometown. And I love when they ask, the kind of leader of the group, why have you stayed? He goes, because, we finally have the power now. Um, and so, and then you have Romero's on camera, cameo spinning the news as a
Mhm.
police chief with a complicit news media. So you've got all that. So Diary of the Dead, I remember reading some reviews when it came out saying that even though it got generally positive reviews, some of the people said, I'm not sure if Romero's saying anything here. Well, I think, we talked about last week with Land of the Dead, where he kind of accidentally ended up kind of commenting on the Bush administration and the war on terror. I think this is much more deliberate, kind
Mhm.
of, it's basically a commentary on Homeland Security and that whole progressive idea that the Bush administration was lying to us. They're just trying to keep us into fear, all the other kind of stuff. And I think that's what's going on with that cameo with Romero and the media and so forth. Don't you?
Yeah. I feel like with both of these movies that we're talking about, the political um, stance of the director and of the filmmakers, I feel like it's a little bit more obvious because people were complaining that he wasn't making stuff obvious enough, so he was like, okay, here you go, here's a reboot found footage, I know you guys like that in this day and age, and oh, here's a message, right there. I don't know. I don't really care for this movie. I've been trying to
I
stay
can
positive.
tell. I'm picking up on that.
I have a lot to say. I just here's what I'll tell you what I enjoyed, okay? The extras on the DVD I had, okay, were kind of funny because George Romero was treating this as if it was the most revolutionary thing that has ever graced the face of this earth. Um,
Get
which
out.
I thought it was hilarious. The opening scene with the reporters, okay, I think that's cool. The people sitting up on the gurneys and killing people, that's cool. When the effects are practical, they're all right. I mean, they're not. I don't think they're the best of the series, but they're pretty good. The thing that I don't like is the CGI blood. I feel like we see a lot of that where people get shot and
Yeah.
a spray of really low quality CGI blood goes out the back of their head. And I have a lot of problems, but if you want to keep recounting the plot, I mean, I don't want to interrupt because I could
Well,
go on.
no, we will get to that. I was just pointing out that, yeah, you can like the acid kill when they're
Mhm.
with a group of African Americans. If you remember that, the guy, they lost one of their own who's had a heart attack or something like that. And, he resurrects as a zombie and so the guy throws acid on him and you can tell that's CGI. And I liked it. It was a little too CGI-ish, I will give you that. But I still think that, oh man, if and the budget on this was limited. Let's say this was not Land of the Dead with 20 million. This was like 2 million.
Mhm.
So they did rely a little too much on CGI. And I do believe Greg Nicotero was the head of effects again. But, I can just see, it kind of broke my heart, even though I thought it was cool. I thought, oh man, you can just see Greg Nicotero like salivating when he read the script and said, oh, somebody's going to throw acid on a zombie? This will be
Yeah.
awesome. And then he had to go CGI. I think that was probably budgetary, don't you?
Mhm. Yeah, it's budgetary, but also you have to think about the fact that you have to pay CGI artists to, design and model this stuff, render it into the scene. So I don't know how much cheaper is CGI than practical effects, because if you get people that really know how to do it, I don't know that it would be that much more expensive, like not by a figure. I guess if you're on such a small budget, and I mean $2 million is a lot of money. I mean, Blair Witch Project was made on a lot less than that, but also Blair Witch Project doesn't have a lot of actual on-screen horror, I would say, or effects. But
Yeah, there's not a lot of
yeah.
effects in Blair Witch, but I think it just depends on what kind of CGI, who's doing the CGI, how much CGI. I think that that's the factor. I think if it's some blood squibs and a zombie's head kind of dissolving or, fire or blood shooting out of somebody's eyes with the crash paddles, I don't think that would be too expensive.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess when you have the full body molds and the giant, like when we're talking about Day of the Dead with the guy being ripped apart and his entrails being eaten, I'm sure that would be a lot more expensive than like a blood splatter. I just don't understand why they went C and when the CGI looks so bad. I mean, I keep railing on the CGI blood, but CGI blood just looks so bad. It doesn't have the same properties as like a real liquid. It just kind of fizzes out and like evaporates in the air. It's the weirdest thing. I can't even describe it. It's like mist. You know what I mean? Like somebody, like a spray bottle of blood.
No, I get it.
Um,
No, yeah, I completely get where you're going, and I do have problems with the film. I'm not coming in as high with this one as I do others. Like when they
mhm,
get to Deb's home, or then they get to the rich brat's home, what's happening. There's nothing that's going to surprise you there. It's going
mhm.
to take a wrong turn, right?
Right. And okay, so like I said, I really dislike this movie. I want to have productive discussions about it, but I want to get where I'm standing out of the way, okay? So, Diary of the Dead, obviously, found footage movie. I have no problem with found footage movies. I just like them to warrant being a found footage movie. You know what I mean? Is that fair that to be a found footage movie, it needs to utilize that and like make sense for it to be a found footage movie?
Yeah, I guess, but I think it's a pretty wide gate. And today,
Yeah,
when you have such an, I mean, look, I mean, how many documentaries are on Netflix right now? I
that's
mean,
true.
when I was growing up, you'd be lucky to get a documentary on PBS once every few years, unless you were Ken Burns. I mean, it's just, but now they're everywhere, and partly it's because, as Joe Bob says all the time, it's so much cheaper than it was, you know,
Hmm.
and so you have documentaries out the wazoo. And so I can see somebody going, okay, we've got a camera crew. The zombie apocalypse is broken out. And they say several times they believe that the army, the government, it'll shut it down. So in the meantime, we're going to make a documentary. I can see a filmmaker doing that. So I don't have a problem with that aspect of it. But I
Hmm.
understand what you're saying. And I know that Wolfman Josh has problems with this movie as a documentary filmmaker. So maybe I'm missing something, but I didn't have a problem with. My problem with this movie, and then I'll let you just go for it. But my problem with this movie is more that one, what Romero has to say here, I think he's already said inadvertently with Land of the Dead. Um, and so, like, what's going to happen when the Army National Guard shows up and they're like, oh, thank goodness we're saved.
Right.
They're not going to be saved.
Hmm.
If you've seen 28 Days Later or anything else, they're not going to be saved. This is not going to go well. When they go, oh goodness, we're home, just drop me off. I'm going to, that's not going to go well. This is a dead movie. And so unlike a straight siege narrative like you get in Night of the Living Dead, or, the kind of mall paradise gone wrong, kind of mall paradise lost, that you get in Dawn of the Dead, it's a little predictable. It's a
Hmm.
little too predictable. But the found footage stuff I didn't always mind. And, so that didn't bother me so much. It just my problem with this movie and my major problem with the next movie is, if I'm going to watch a Romero Dead movie, one of two things, or I'm going to watch a zombie movie, one of two things is going to happen. Okay, it's either just going to be a straight zombie movie and it's just going to be a lot of fun, like Zombieland, or it's just
Hmm.
going to be, straight kind of, here are the zombies, we need to kill them, like Full Cheese Zombie or something like that. It's just going to be a gross out and okay, fine. Or it's going to have something to say. And typically with Romero, he has something to say, but here it's like, okay, you've already said it.
Yep.
So now it just feels like, oh, you can do found footage movies and make money,
Hmm.
Blair Witch and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just like Romero is repeating himself just with a smaller budget and being able to pull it off. And then because of the way that he did it with the road trip thing, which I've read, I don't know, I've read probably a dozen zombie novels that do the same thing. That every like 10 miles, something bad's going to happen,
Hmm.
which is what happens here. And that's my problem with it. I didn't have a problem with it as a found footage movie. I didn't have a problem with the premises being a found footage. My problem with it was just a little too predictable. That's mine, but you go
Hmm.
for yours.
Okay. So maybe my problem with it isn't that they're recording it, that they keep recording. My problem is, why was it released? Uh, so
Whoa,
um,
really?
I mean, not the movie, the video in that is in the movie. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
okay. So you're talking about when they're like uploading stuff online and all that
Sure.
kind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So in the beginning, we get this narration, right, from one of the characters, and she says, "Oh, well, he would want this to be released, and I've added music to it and edits to scare you, because she says I've added music to the footage hoping to
Oh,
scare
you're
you
going
because
back to
I am
the
trying to scare
opening
you.
narration. Okay, the opening
Why
narration
is
is
she
what you're
trying to
talking about.
scare you? This is footage of her friends in peril. Like, who does that? And okay, one thing that was pointed out to me, I watched the Cinemassacre Monster Madness. He does like short reviews on movies, and he covered this movie, and the one thing he said was, the camera somehow always catches all of the action, and the audio is somehow always perfect. Everybody is always, it's like they've got lav mics on, except they don't. You can always hear everybody
True.
perfectly, and you can always see all of the action. It's always lit well, and somehow the camera always is pointed at, like when there's one moment where the guy sets the camera down and he sets it down facing himself, like he sets it down facing himself while he's hugging, like, who does that just all the time, just setting it down facing them whenever they're doing something? It's kind of laughable.
So your
trying to
problem
work it
with it
in.
as a found footage movie is it's too perfect. If it had more
Yeah. Yeah,
flaws, it would be
exactly.
it would look more realistic. And
And
if they didn't, if the opening narration had nothing to it, more of just kind of it was a she's putting out there as a cautionary tale rather than something else.
yeah, right. And movies like Blair Witch, we keep talking about Blair Witch, but that is a sterling example of a found footage movie, in my opinion. You know, you have scenes where it's just the character's forehead, and you can't see what's happening. It's what you don't see that's scarier, because you're not going to have the camera trained on everything that's happening at all times. That's not how you work. And I've been in situations where I'm filming something and I hear something that's really scary, and I'm like, oh, what was that? You know what I mean? I don't train the camera on anything. I just leave the camera where it is because that's not the most important thing. But in this movie, it's always priority numero uno. You know, my friends are dying, whatever. Got to get the camera. Got to cover this. You know, when does it stop being? When does it stop being so important that I make this movie and start being more important that you survive to edit the movie in the first place? And as we see, uh, doesn't go
Well,
so
but
well.
are you going from the premise that that these people are as moral as you are? I mean,
Yeah. Well, I
because
mean,
I was thinking about this when I was watching it. Could you see this? Now, in 2007, it probably would not have been, but now you could say it's one of those, maybe one of the things Romero ended up doing that he didn't count on, kind of like in Land of the Dead, is it's almost a commentary on, well, Pixar didn't happen culture.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, but really, when does it gets ridiculous after a certain point? I can understand recording the beginning and being like, "Oh, this is really cool," but then when it starts getting really bad, like when you have a friend shoot themselves and you record it and you keep that on camera and you put that in the movie, um, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? And that's not my
Well,
only
but
problem
I
with.
mean, I don't know. I mean, I see stuff on the news every morning where people are recording with their phone, and you're thinking, why aren't you getting in there to help that person? Why are you just standing there recording? So I'm
Yeah,
not
but
sure.
that's different.
I
That's
understand what
different.
you're saying, but
Yeah, and that's not the only problem I have with this movie. I have a problem with the acting. Not that
oh,
I mean,
I'm there with you. I'm there with you. The acting is mediocre at best.
yeah, compared to the other, I mean, it's not that bad. But when you have a found footage movie, you have to really sell that these are real people, and I don't feel like these are real people. I feel like they're characters, and that doesn't work so well with a found footage movie. Um, you know, with Survival of the Dead, which we'll talk about later, I mean, the acting is just as bad, if not worse, in some parts. But it's not a found footage movie, so you're not supposed to believe that these are just your regular, everyday, everyday Joe just recording a video. With found footage movies, you have to believe that they're real people you're watching going through real experiences. Like, I think a movie that does it really well is like the visit. Like those kid actors are phenomenal.
Yes,
And
they are.
you really believe that they're in peril, right? With this movie, I'm like, okay, when are the actors going to stop shooting and when do they get off set? You know what I mean? That's all I'm thinking about, because they're trying to sell that these people are really going through these experiences and that they're really recording it firsthand. But all you feel like is, okay, now they're going through this choreography and now they're going over here. Their mark is over there. Oh, it looks like there's a little bit of tape on the ground. That's where they're supposed to stop so they can be in frame. You know what I mean? It just doesn't
So
feel like
would
the
you
real people.
wanted more character development, like where they're in the RV traveling, maybe a little bit more
Yeah. Oh, I have.
backstory? We don't get anything other than the faculty advisor gets some, right? Where he's
Yeah.
talking about,
And
yeah.
he's cool. But there's one of the biggest problems I have with it is the way they're introduced, where you find out their names because the guy behind the camera has them all say their names to the camera. Like that's the laziest thing ever. Please state your name for the camera. Like, is that really the most important thing in a zombie apocalypse? And they all say their first and last names right into the camera, like it's totally natural, like that's their real name, first and last name. Like, who says their name? Like, my name is Sarah Jessica Tyler, and I am 39 years old. That is what the director told me to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, but still, okay. But well, let me say this before we go on, because I think we're probably close to wrapping this puppy up from what you're saying. Um, I did think it was cool the cameos in this. Did you catch the voice cameos in this?
No, obviously. I mean, there's no way you can't catch George Romero, but I didn't catch any voice. Was
Wes
there like somebody
Craven.
over? Where
What
was Wes Craven in this movie?
he was one of the many of the when you're listening to news reports or public
Oh,
announcements, stuff
okay.
like that. You've got Wes Craven, Stephen King, Tom Savini, Guillermo del Toro, Simon Pegg, and Quentin
Okay.
Tarantino.
I thought I heard some British Cockney accent, but I wasn't sure where that was coming from. Yeah, but that doesn't really sell me on this movie. That just sounds like, oh, they paid them to come into the studio for a day. I mean, I love all those people and
Oh,
their
they
work,
volunteered
but
for George.
you don't think they were paid in any way?
Tom may have been, but the rest of them volunteered for George.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I can see Tom Savini being like, okay, so money when?
yeah,
um,
yeah. But no, the rest of them volunteered it, and so I do like the voice cameo. So I just wanted to get that in there if people didn't know. But
sure.
okay, so back to your point. Yeah, I do have I have problems with the acting. I agree with you. It would have been a stronger film if it appeared to be a little more flawed found
Hmm.
footage film. If I'm thinking of, there are parts in the Paranormal Activity movies, for example, where you don't see what's going on. A person is dragged
Yep.
off camera, and for like 30 seconds or more, you're just left there in silence. You have no idea what's going on. And I think that proved effective. And so that's
Hmm.
what you're saying, is that it could have
Yep.
used a little more of that.
Yep. You feel like it's a professional camera crew, and these are students. These are not people that would, always be on track and always be on focus, and the lighting is always perfect. That would never happen in real life. Um, I just feel like, and one of the things also I saw this pointed out in Monster Madness. There's a part where the battery indicator flashes on screen, but that wouldn't be in the recording. That only plays on the monitor of the camera,
Right.
not in the recording. Why
Right.
is that in the recording? um, so they tried to add flaws to it to make it look like it's really recording from a camera, but then the logic doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but I think that for the average viewer, I hear what you're saying, and you've been behind a camera, I've been behind a camera. I think that was what Josh's problems with it were as well. But I think for the average viewer, they wouldn't catch that.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's where most of my problems, in a vacuum, this movie would be a pretty good zombie movie. If you didn't know that this was the master of zombies, if you didn't know this was George Romero, if you had no idea what that meant, if you didn't know that this was a sequel to Land of the Dead, which I thought was, or I guess it's not a sequel, a reboot of the series of Land, Day, Dawn, and Night, then this would be a pretty good movie, a pretty good found footage movie too. But in the context of it being a Living Dead movie, and it being, this, it seems like, oh, George Romero is going to make more zombie movies more than ever. But what does that cost? You know what I mean? He made Land of the Dead, and then immediately after he made this, and then immediately after Survival of the Dead, and the quality is just not there anymore. It just, I don't know.
So,
I'm
so your expectations played a big part in it.
Yep. And after Land of the Dead, I mean, I kind of dug that movie. This movie just let me down.
Okay. All right. So, anything else you want to bring up on Diary of the Dead before we put this baby to rest, put it on the fire?
If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. So no, I'm ready to rate it.
Okay. Well, I'll go first because no, I'll tell you what. You go first. So you tell me,
Okay.
what is your rating and recommendation on Diary of the Dead?
Okay. As a Romero Dead movie, this movie sucks. As a zombie movie in general, it's okay. So I'm gonna average the two of those together. This is a 3.5 out of 10.
Oh,
I call it a low priority rental, and I would say the special features are cool, and I would recommend that you see the special features. I would recommend you see this once. If it's not your bag, move on.
I liked it a lot more than you. I do have problems with it. And I have some serious issues with the acting, and I hear what you're saying about the camera work and so forth. Um, I think it's still an enjoyable movie. I think there are parts of it I think that are really good. I think that it does work as a commentary on kind of our narcissistic selfie culture. So I still like it. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10.
Mm.
And I would say that it's definitely worth a rental, though we both own it.
Mm-hmm.
I own the Blu-ray, you own the DVD. So I would say that if you're a Romero completist, buy it. If you're a zombie fan, you definitely want to see it. I would say for horror fans in general, it's a fairly low priority rental, but I would still recommend checking it out.
All right, man, I'm so excited for this next movie.
Oh boy, I hope you have something to say because man, I rewatched this this morning, and I had not seen it in probably 9 years. So,
hmm
um, so let's move on to 2010's Survival of the Dead.
Last time anyone counted, 53 million people were dying every year, 150,000 every day, 107 every minute. It had become an us versus them world. All we were looking for was a place where there was no them.
Lousy times make lousy people.
All the wrong people are dying.
This island needs to be rid of them.
We like it here. We think the best way of seeing this through is here. We don't want no place. We want some place. Like where? Like an island.
It's an island off the coast of Delaware. Come on over. The only families that ever lived on this island were yours and mine. No strangers. What are you gonna do with them? They're Muldoons. It's up to me to save them.
You can't save a person who's already dead.
Somebody's gonna find a cure for this. A beautiful place to live. And to die.
There's no way out.
Will one of you give me some more bullets for this gun? We gotta get these things to learn to eat something other than us.
Also better known as Hatfield and McCoy's during the zombie apocalypse.
Yes. Yep.
Isn't that the
Irish.
plot?
Yep. A bunch of Irish people disagree on what to do with zombies. So they kick one guy out, and there you go. There's the plot of the movie.
Well, the interesting thing about this is, let's talk about that for a second. This is, if you haven't seen it, and this is probably the Romero's Dead film that probably got the least viewership, I would guess. You've got a film shot in Canada, set on an island off of Delaware for some reason. And on this island, Plum Island, off the coast of Delaware, you have two rival families who are both Irish, though they appear to have been there for some time. And they've been rival families for a long time. So this Hatfield McCoy thing's been going on in Delaware for a long time. I can see if they shot this off the coast of Georgia. I'm not sure about Delaware. I've been to Delaware many times, unfortunately, and I never encountered any rednecks or Irish people. But anyway,
we do get both of those. That's strange. I feel like they're just archetypes thrown in here.
But in Delaware, it's just an odd choice. It's anyway. I spent way too much time in Delaware when I was traveling, but it's an odd choice. And so this family's never gotten along. The zombie apocalypse breaks out. They disagree. One family thinks that it is apparently God's will, I think he says at one point, to save especially the zombies that are related to him or his friends, on the possibility that a cure will come around, right?
But he goes back on that later. I mean, he does not make good on that
Well,
promise.
he's got some strange ideas, and it's a little, it's not very clear, but he... and the other family decides, no, we just need to kill all the zombies and make the island safe. And so they clash over that. And it comes to gunfights, and one of them gets banished. In the meantime, we're reintroduced to the National Guard unit who robbed the students in Dire
Who
of
are
the
our
Dead.
protagonists now? What the heck? They're a protagonist?
I
like,
know.
why are we choosing to follow these guys?
I know. It's an odd
confused me a
choice.
little bit.
It's an odd choice. And so They pick up a kid, teenager, and he's got a video of the guy has been banished, trying to get people to come to the island. It turns out he's just trying to rob people, but they get on a ferry, they get to the island, and the battle between the two ensue. The National Guardsmen, who on one hand are going, I don't stick my neck out for anybody, suddenly they're throwing in with one family. I don't really understand that. And so that battle ensues. I'm not sure I understand the ending. I'm not sure I understand the choice of accents. I'm not sure I understand a lot of what's going on here. I'm not sure what this movie's trying to say. Apparently, I read that Romero was inspired to make this movie by his favorite Western, The Big Country, which is a movie that it's got like Charlton Heston and Burl Ives in it and stuff. It's a beautifully shot Western. I don't think it's a particularly great Western. I'm not sure why Romero picked this or why a guy with Hispanic heritage from the Bronx decided that the Hatfield and McCoys was a really interesting subject. I don't really get it. There's just a lot of strange choices in this movie.
Sure. Can I throw you a curveball?
Go for it.
I like this more than Diary of the Dead.
Oh, man. Good Lord, why?
Hear me out. I like this more than Diary of the Dead for a few reasons. First of all, Diary of the Dead was fresh, in my head. Without the found footage style, the below average acting from some of the characters I thought was less distracting. Also, that island looks really cozy. It looks like a place where I would want to spend a weekend. And that flaming headed zombie kill was awesome.
The flare gun kill,
I don't care what you say. Yeah, flare gun kill. That was awesome.
That was heavy CGI though.
All of it's CGI in this movie, essentially, except for the zombies when they're not being killed. Like there's a kill early on where the guy's like the middle part of his head is blown off or hit away or something. I don't quite remember. And then the top half of his head falls onto his neck stump. It's just a lot of weird CGI. And it's not a good movie. This is not a good movie.
No.
But I thought it was more fun than Diary of the Dead. I want to clarify. It's more fun than Diary of the Dead. I had a better time watching it because the characters are all expendable and that's the most fun. I don't know. I feel like Diary of the Dead was more heavy than this movie. This movie is more just wow, cool zombie kills, and we're going on an island now, and they're Irish people. What? Why are there Irish people? I don't know. There are zombies chained to mailboxes. There's a mailman zombie who's chained to the mailbox, and he picks up mail, puts it in the mailbox, takes the mail out of the mailbox, goes back and puts the mail in the mailbox again. And that's his routine. There's zombies driving cars in this movie. They drive a car on the ferry. So that's cool. There are zombies killed with fire extinguishers. They get fire extinguished in their head, and then their eyes pop out.
Yeah, I wasn't clear on why that was happening, but that's
I don't
right.
know. Everybody knows that those are so pressurized that they'll just make your head explode.
Yes.
But there's a scene where a guy's swimming through a lake, and there are zombies grabbing at him, and he bites a zombie finger off, and then turns into a zombie.
That's something new. Strange. Yeah.
And I always thought that was what was inferred, that the fluids from the zombie are what turn you into a zombie, right? That's like
it's
so
more
if you bit the blood.
Yeah, it's laid out more clearly in 28 Days Later than it is here. But yeah,
sure.
I guess so. Yeah, it's the bite and the exchanging of fluids and that kind of stuff. I guess.
But that raises some problems that. In the original, in Night of the Living Dead, they said that you could die anyway and you turn into a zombie. It was like there was some kind of radioactivity where it would turn dead people back into the living dead. It doesn't matter how you died. You could die of natural causes. You could die of an accidental death, and you'd still turn into a zombie. I think that's what the news reporter says.
Well, yeah, and we get that at the end, right? At the very end with that rather odd ending, yeah.
But I don't understand why it has to be like. Okay, so that's cool, right? That the zombies, and I guess this is a remake, so any logic goes. But that the zombies fluid turns into a zombie.
Diary and if I'm correct,
not a remake,
Diary and Survival are reboots, of kind of the of Romero zombie universe, yeah.
I guess remake is when you directly adapt an earlier work, and
Right. So
reboot
the
is just
yeah.
retake the idea. And
So
um,
Savini's 90 film Night of the Living Dead would be a
was a
remake.
remake.
Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead would be a remake. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting that he's assigning new logic to these zombies, except not really, because some of the logic still carries over. But yeah, it's not a good movie. The editing is weird sometimes.
It's very odd.
The characters are stock. The zombies aren't very threatening. I mean, they're just slapstick opportunities essentially. It's a parody of Dawn of the Dead. I feel like all the characters, these big tough army guys who are, police officers in the original, they're just kind of big tough gunning down zombies, and this is a parody kind of that original idea. But I just wasn't bothered by it so much. I feel like it wasn't trying to be it didn't take itself as seriously, so that's why it didn't bother me that the movie was bad in a lot of regards. I just had more fun with it. With Diary of the Dead, it was very serious and somber. Like these are the final moments of these young students, and you are to feel very bad about them, even though you hate them. Survival of the Dead is more like these people are idiots. Watch them die, and the fact that it's more upfront with that made me appreciate it more. I had more fun with it. And I thought that there were some interesting ideas too coming from the two families. The fact that like these people, even though that like we see a scene with the children, chained to the bed, they're zombies, and there's something primal in us that won't let us kill kids even if they're zombies. I feel like there's some good themes, some cool action scenes, some comedy that lands. Of course there's some that doesn't, but there's some
A
comedy that
lot
lands.
that doesn't.
Well, I think a lot of that comes from the era. I mean, this is 2009, but really 2010, and that was very much the era of Yo Mama jokes, and as we see in
Oh
one
no
scene,
no
the
no
guy's
no.
watching.
Yo Mama is early 90s. This is way
I don't know.
past Yo Mama.
I remember seeing early YouTube videos with Yo Mama, so it made a resurgence when the internet really
Okay,
came
that
up.
must have been a kind of a nostalgia thing, because that was like they used to sell the Yo Mama books in like B. Dalton bookstores back in the late 80s and early 90s. So
This is more of like a, because we see one scene where what is his name? I forget what his name is. The bald soldier or National Guard guy, who's watching a live stream
right.
of these slaps. I mean, and it says 3 weeks after the breakout of zombies, right? And
Right.
they're already making comedy bits about it. I mean, people are dying, and they're making comedy bits
And that
about
is the
zombies.
worst attempt at a late night talk show I have ever
Yeah,
seen. I mean,
you got one guy playing the piano, and you got another guy sitting on the couch just like making jokes about them. Who would watch that? I mean, it looks like a bad
oh,
improv class.
it
Um,
looks like a bad parody of a bad talk show on like Comedy Central is what it looks like.
It looks like what the Eric Andre show is, like but that's a good example of it, where they're trying to be a bad talk show host or a bad talk show and just good for comedy. But here's the thing, I feel like I'm disparaging this movie too much. It's a lot of fun. I feel like it retains the fun of movies like Dawn of the Dead without any of the good, like interesting, like thought-provoking stuff. It's just cool zombie action. With a few moral quandaries. I feel like they pull
Well,
that up. And like I said,
I tried to analyze this. I mean, what is he saying with these two families? I mean, is one of them like, I don't know, pro-life, and the other one like pro-choice and pro-euthanasia?
that
I don't know.
that might be it.
It might be, I guess. I don't know, but it's because so much of the focus is on, this kind of Hatfield and McCoy thing between the two families, that it just kind of seems to dominate everything. And,
Right.
I just, and so many of these people are like, there's only two likable characters, in my opinion, in this film. Um, and one of them does one of the dumbest things I've ever seen with her twin sister.
Mhm.
And then, somehow the real survivalist is the tech geek millennial who also happens to be a crack shot,
Yep.
3 weeks into the zombie apocalypse. I don't know. And I'm not trying to nitpick. It's just, I didn't have fun with this like you did. I had almost zero fun with this.
Really?
No, I didn't care about the characters. It never felt like they were really in danger. It just felt like, if they were in danger, they'd place themselves that way because they're just morons, like the soldiers, the guy who's working for the one family who, after the zombies are unleashed, and what do they do? Instead of just running, they run into a barn. I mean, why would
Yeah.
you? I mean, they're just morons. And so I didn't really feel for him. The only part I felt bad was when the girl does something really stupid and walks up to her twin sister and gets bit. And,
Mhm.
and so and I thought it was a waste of talent. You've got Kenneth Walsh playing the Irishman. I've forgotten all the characters' names. Playing the Irishman who is baiting people with come to the island thing when he's there on the dock and he's trying to, get everybody's
What's his
stuff.
name? I don't know that we ever get a first name, but I know his last name is O'Flynn, right?
Is no Flynn? Okay. So he is, a great actor. Kenneth Walsh has been in a lot of good stuff. He was in A Day After Tomorrow. He was wonderful in the original Twin Peaks back in the day. He's
And
done
The
some really.
Void. He was in The Void, right?
That's
From
right. He was in
2016.
The Void. That's right. He played one of the doctors in The Void. He was fantastic in The Void. So he's a great actor. I just felt like with the accent and everything, they just didn't give him
Yeah.
anything really. And
Yeah.
so it was kind of a
And I don't
waste of his
understand.
talent.
One thing I don't understand is he's trying to kill the people, the people we're following, and then he jumps on the ferry and they're just totally okay with him. I guess they've got to get to Plum, but like, don't they already? I mean, he doesn't really give them any interesting information
Due
or
east and
information
don't,
they need.
and there's no deep water, a place to dock, so you have to stop and you kind of have to take the dinghy, and
Yeah,
that's
but
you're going to lose.
I feel like these army guys could have figured that out themselves. They seem pretty like sure-footed,
Well, the one
judging by
driving the
how they.
boat seems to know what he's doing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And did he have an arc? I feel like maybe he had an arc, but I'm not sure because
Well,
he's
he does apologize and then gets shot in the back.
because he
But
doesn't tell anybody that he's turning into a zombie.
well, yeah, but he's just, that doesn't, I mean, he hasn't changed that much because of the ending scene we see where even in his last remaining zombie conscious, he's still trying to square off against the guy, right?
Yeah.
And they're just shooting empty guns at each other because that's all they know, kind of like the zombies in Dawn of the Dead. That's all they know is to go
Mhm.
shop. All they know is to shoot at each other. Um, I thought this was a complete waste of time and George Romero's talent. It was his last movie. I think it's really sad. I think that it could have been something really cool, especially if he was going to follow up Diary of the Dead. I think he could have done something there. I would love to have seen the faculty advisor because I thought he was great from Diary of the Dead.
Mhm.
I think he was the strongest actor in Diary of the Dead. He had been in war. I guess, he's kind of old for it, but it kind of implies that he'd been in war somewhere. I don't know if he was, the Falkland Islands or where he was British. But anyway, he implies he's been in war. Maybe he was, in Afghanistan in the early days of it or something. I don't know. But I would like to have seen more of him. I had no desire to see really the National Guard. I had no
Mhm.
desire to go to Delaware. I had no desire for the Irish accents. I didn't care about these characters really. They didn't make
Man.
sense to me. I don't think it really had much to say. I can't stand this movie.
Oh, but I like this more than Diary of the Dead. It's less pretentious. It leans into it more. And hey, listen, did you watch this on the DVD with the introduction?
Oh, no, I did not. I watched it on Tubi TV for
Oh.
free.
Okay. Well, in the DVD, there's an introduction of George Romero, and he's filming an introduction, and zombies keep wrecking his set. They keep walking into frame and knocking stuff over, and he has to keep turning around and shooting one, but it keeps getting back up. And that just really, he was like, this is a horror movie, but there's a lot of comedy, and I hope you'll have some fun. And it seemed like, oh, like he just wants you to have fun with this movie. So maybe that framed how I saw it. Like, he was just trying to have a fun time with it. And, there's that, and also there's one thing that was confusing to me. You watched this on Tubi, so you wouldn't have experienced this, but on the DVD, when you first get into the menu, it asks you if you want to be the dead or the living, and you can select one of the two. And from my knowledge, it didn't do anything. Yeah, I selected the dead. I was like, oh, are we going to be from the zombies' perspective or something? Watching the movie, no. It was just a regular movie. I think it might have to do with the ending, but I'll have to watch the living side to confirm that, and I'll
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
It
Because
said, yeah.
I bought this for you to watch on DVD.
Mhm.
I'm not buying this for me. That ain't gonna happen.
The special
So
features are pretty cool. This is a 2-disc DVD. It's got lots of special features on it, and it's kind of like a send-off from George Romero, because he's got a lot of footage on there, with him and his ponytail. He was rocking that. Just talking about the movie, and it seems like he had a lot of fun filming it, and he just wanted to, at this point, not really make something that was culturally like earth shattering. He just wanted to make a fun zombie movie, and I feel like he succeeded. It's not a good movie. I wouldn't show this to somebody and be like, "This is the zombie movie you need to see if you haven't seen one before." I'd just be like, if you're a fan of zombie movies, this is another one to watch, and it's kind of fun. There's some fun scenes and some fun use of the spaces they're given, like the ferry. I feel like there are a lot of good set pieces on that, and the island. Like I said, I think it's beautiful, and I like the way they use that in. They contrast that with the zombies and how dirty and dingy they are, and the greed of the humans. I feel like that's interesting, but I wouldn't rate this highly on its merits necessarily as a horror movie, but more as just a fun experience.
I have always said this: when a filmmaker wants to make a Western and they can't make a Western, don't make a Western. And so George Romero always wanted to make a Western. I think this is his excuse, and I don't think
Yeah,
it
but
works.
John Carpenter wanted to make westerns, and a lot of his movies show that. I mean, Escape from New York, that's pretty much a western.
I wouldn't necessarily consider Escape from New York. I would definitely say Ghost of Mars is, and we saw how that turned out.
Ew. Well,
Um,
he wanted to direct westerns, right? That was his whole goal
oh yeah,
going into
he's a
the.
big Howard Hawks fan. So yeah, he wanted to
Mhm,
direct westerns, and so is Romero. Romero's a film fan. Period.
mhm.
He even likes musicals. He did his second movie was There's Always Vanilla, which he wanted to do a drama and it didn't work. But um, I I don't think it works. I think the acting it's mediocre, and it could have been good because if they just taken out the stupid accents, because if you're in Delaware, there's not Irish clans on the island in Delaware, folks. Um, and so if they would just let Kenneth Walsh play Kenneth Walsh,
Mhm.
I think it could have been a lot better. Um, I think if he's trying to say something other than just a fun zombie movie and a Western kind of thing, um, then he should have said it. If not, so be it. But I just didn't have fun with it. I didn't have that much fun with it because I just didn't care about the characters that much. Whereas I love, like, Zombieland is obviously a comedy horror film, and I love Zombieland because I love the characters in it, right?
Mhm.
Even though Jesse Eisenberg is kind of annoying, even though
Well, that's
Woody
how that's how
Harrelson
he's
is,
sure, he's supposed to be annoying, though. That's
yeah,
what
that's
you're supposed.
he's just kind of who he is from what I can tell from the
Right.
movies. But Woody Harrelson and so forth, they're conniving, but you come to love them and it's fun. And so you care about them.
Mhm.
But I didn't give a rat's butt about any of these people. I didn't care. And I didn't think it was that well done. I thought a lot of it was distracting. And so, nope, thumbs down for me, sir.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to rating this because I think I have one that'll throw you for a loop. Seeing this as George Romero's send off. I mean, like, for the Living Dead franchise, this is it. This is the last movie we really
Yeah.
get. I mean, Greg Nicotero went on to do The Walking Dead, which, obviously, totally shook the pop culture for 5 or 6 years. Um, I mean, it's kinda sad. I want to love this movie. I want it to be something that's amazing, this giant, epic that really encapsulates the whole thing, and it doesn't do that, but I still had fun with it. I still thought it was funny, and there were some scenes that were a little suspenseful, not as much as movies like Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead, but, I did still have fun with it. My ranking is going to, uh, take that into account.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Well, wanting ain't getting, as they say here in Appalachia. And I
Okay.
want to love all these movies too. And I love George Romero. He seems just like a giant teddy bear. Uh, I love that he was usually a filmmaker, had something to say, whether I agreed with it or not. I'm always rooting for independent horror filmmakers. So I wanted to like this too. But As they also say here in Appalachia, you can't polish a turd. It's just
Oh,
this is a terrible movie. I'm sorry, it's a terrible movie. So, what else do you want to say before I rate this? Because
um,
and I'll go first so we can end on a positive note.
sure. Okay, well, mm,
You're
I'm really
straying here,
struggling
buddy.
here.
You're
I
really,
like
really.
it. You can't really. One of the things that this is going to sound like a tangent, but it'll relate. One of the things I'm learning about right now in college English is that when you're writing a paper, emotional supports are not supports. You need something that is backed by cold hard evidence, and I can't really do that with this movie. There's no one part in the movie that I can point to and say this is masterful. This is a reason you need to buy this movie and have it in your collection. It's just a feeling I get from the whole movie that is kind of fun, and it's just like schlocky 2000s action with zombies. Over reliance on CGI, but I mean that was kind of par for the course at that point. Um, and it's just kind of fun. The characters are stupid, and the zombies are obviously stupid because that's zombies. But there's some fun action set pieces. So I'm gonna let you rank it, and then I'll move on to mine, and hopefully, I mean, it's not gonna be a shining light for the series, but I've got a more positive outlook.
All right. So I had high hopes when I saw this when it dropped to DVD in 2010, 2011. I watched it. I was confused when it was over. I was very confused. I rewatched it. I rewatched it today. I'm still confused. I am sad that this was Romero's last film. He didn't want it to be his last film. He had plans to do another one, and it didn't happen. But he got sick after this, which is sad. And I don't think this tarnishes his legacy or anything. I mean, the guy made
No.
several classic movies. I mean, we've talked about Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, which we all liked, but there's also Creepshow, obviously out there. Martin, not the
And the
best.
Crazies.
The Crazies and Martin were not the best shot or acted films, but they were interesting, at least. I will give them that. So, but yeah, he's a giant in the horror genre. I respect him. God rest his soul. But I gotta say, I gotta call when I see it. And Survival of the Dead is a 3.5 out of 10 for
Oh
me.
no!
And
See, now I know how you felt with Diary of the Dead when I rated it.
now it's a void.
Oh, okay. Well, now hear me out. This one is a 6 out of 10 for me.
How did we
And
reverse this? We did not rehearse this, folks.
When in comparison with Diary of the Dead, I feel like this is a 6 out of 10. Overall, as a movie, I think it's a 6 out of 10. Like I said, it's just kind of flat for me. I feel like it's 6 out of 10. It's barely positive. I had fun with it. Not a good movie, but it's fun. I don't think it's the worst of the series. I don't think it's anywhere near the best. But it's just,
It's
one
the
of those
worst of the
movies you watch
series.
on a rainy day. Come on.
It's the worst of the
Diary of the
series.
Dead, though.
No,
Oh,
Diary of the Dead's better.
I added music because I'm hoping to scare you. Oh,
I know, I get that. And the one, as much as I love Eduardo Sanchez's Exist, which is a found footage movie about Bigfoot, and I think it's a wonderful film, but there's music in that too, which I don't understand. I get that, but I think Diary of the Dead's a better film. So I cannot recommend this at all. I just think it's terrible. Now, if people think I'm wrong and they think you're right, which tends to be the way that cookie crumbles, as again, it's on Tubi TV for free right now. You have to sign up, but you don't have to pay anything. You just get, stuff sent to your spam email address, which is what I do. There are ads, but there's usually only 1 or 2 ads per movie.
right.
And so you can go to Tubi TV and Survival of the Dead's on there. So if you don't want to risk paying any money for it, you can go and do that. And I would definitely recommend not paying any money for this movie.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
see, I'm hurt. I'm personally hurt.
This is
I didn't have
Romero's.
any.
This is Romero's Ghosts of Mars.
I don't know. I would see it more as In the Mouth of Madness. I'm sorry.
No, In the Mouth of Madness is a good film.
Yeah, I think this is a good film.
Oh no. No.
I've angered the beast.
This is close to being Carpenter's The Ward, actually. So it's anyway. So that is, we have successfully run through all of Romero's Dead movies on our build up to Halloween, and so we will be back hopefully next week. Coming into November, we do have at least planned a couple guests to come on. So maybe not next week, but in the ensuing weeks, we have a couple guests coming on, and they've picked some movies they like to talk about. And so, Lord willing, we'll be back next week. We usually record on Sunday afternoons. If there's anybody out there who listens to the podcast regularly and like to chime in, would like to be a guest, as long as you're respectful and really want to talk about these movies, you're welcome to come on in. And so we're using a new software now, so that may be a little bit of a challenge, but we'll figure it out. And so usually on Sunday afternoons around 3:00 is when we do this. And so if you're out there listening, want to do, I've had several people say they do. So we'll see if we can put that together between now and the end of the year when we do our best of list. We do want to wish you all a happy Halloween. We hope you have a safe and a fun one. They're filled with lots of horror movies and lots of food that's not good for you. I'm currently on a keto diet, which I am going to break on Halloween because there is no way I'm going to get through Halloween with no carbs. I need popcorn chips and I need candy on Halloween. That's just the way it is. That's how God intended it, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
So,
God ordained candy allowance.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. Well, we always buy like 4 or 5 bags of candy. We have a lot of kids that come down the street, but we always have at least like 3/4 of a bag left. And so because I love my wife and I don't want her to be diabetic, I take one for the team and I help her finish that candy off. That's just the way it is. And I typically watch Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween on Halloween, but since I just watched it the other night with Joe Bob, I don't know. We may have to switch that tradition up
For me,
one.
it's Trick or Treat. For me, Trick or Treat and Halloween are the movies that I watch.
So when you say you mean Trick or Treat 2009, not Trick or Treat from like the 80s, right?
No, Trick or Treat with the R, super cool and stylized, with Sam.
Sam, yeah. Not Sammy Kerr, the demon rocker, but Sam I gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is a pretty good horror anthology if you're looking for something that's spooky for that kind.
It's a great horror anthology.
Yep, and it's got that vibe. You know what I mean? There's some horror movies that are great horror movies, but you don't want to watch them on Halloween because they don't have that same chilling October 31st vibe. But I feel like Trick or Treat, Halloween, and Ernest Scared Stupid are the 3 movies that perfectly suit that occasion.
Well, Vern,
hey, Ernest Scared Stupid is a good movie.
All right, Vern, I'll skip that one. But
what?
Nah, I'll skip that one. Nah, I'll skip that one.
Well, what about
All
the
right,
Killer
what do you
Clown?
mean? Okay, Little John. Watch the Watts. I'm not a huge fan of Ernest Scared Stupid. I'm not a hater. It's just not a huge fan, and I'm not giving into my wife's suggestion that we watch Boo a Madeira or Halloween or whatever either. That's what she likes. So
I one of the things I appreciate, I think it's horror guy Bry on Letterboxd. His bio is it's from South Park. Stop giving Tyler Perry money, which is exactly what we all need to think about. Tyler Perry's going to keep making movies unless we stop giving him money. So don't go see Medea movies.
No. Yes. My wife, our producer and editor, who is smart and lovely and wonderful, actually went to the theater and paid money to see a Madeira movie. And she's now telling me I'm number one. So, bless her heart. She's sick. I should cut her some slack. She's got bronchitis. So, but anyway, where can they find you online, buddy?
Well, on Twitter, I'm at Kane_Hero12. On Letterboxd, I'm at KaneHero, and that's KAINE_Hero12 on Twitter, and then spelled the same way on Letterboxd. I've got a YouTube channel, and then there's also a YouTube channel for Father and Son Watch Horror Movies, which I posted video to yesterday.
Great
I'm going to
video.
try to do...
Yeah. Great
Thank
video,
you.
yeah.
I'm gonna try to do at least one a month, but you know how schedules like that go, especially when I'm doing the podcast and I've got college classes and all that.
Right. Absolutely. And yeah, I'm trying to do this thing called a doctorate, which I have this 40-page paper due on November 15th. So um, prayers and good thoughts, all kind of stuff appreciated, because I'm still doing my research to get this thing written. They can find me at Pastor Matt R on Twitter and Letterboxd. And of course, you can find us both at fatherandsonwatchhorror.com. We are also on Twitter, Father and Son Horror, Instagram, YouTube, as Jackson said. We have a closed Facebook group. You just need to send me a friend request and tell me that that's what you want, and I'll be sure to stick you in there, and so you can connect with some people who don't do Twitter. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We would appreciate a 5-star review. Also, please share with your friends in the horror community, and we would love to hear from you. So connect with us. If you have a suggestion or a movie you'd like covered, or you'd like to be on the show, and just hit us up on Twitter, send us a message on Twitter, or just whatever you like, and we'll see if we can't work it out. Like I said earlier, we usually record on Sunday afternoons around 3 o'clock for now, though when you go on break, we'll have some different times probably where people can call in, maybe some weeknights or something like that. We typically have used Skype. We're experimenting with Zencaster, which the lovely Megan has set up for us. So we'll see how that goes. Tune in next week. We are tentatively looking at a couple of movies that have an anniversary this year. One, I believe, is its 35th anniversary, a Wes Craven movie from 1984, and another one is celebrating its 45th anniversary this October. It is a movie by Tobe Hooper from 1974, and of course, every horror fan, I think, knows what movies we're talking about. So those could be next up. Well, you and I will be talking about that this week. So thanks for listening, folks. Have a great and happy Halloween. Here is to Dave, Dr. Shock Becker. Hope he's healing up, and hope he's up and about and completely healed up by Halloween, so he can do his ritual of House of a Thousand Corpses and have a good time there. So say goodbye to the good people, Jackson.
Goodbye, and remember to chain up your mailman.
Oh, man. Just remember to avoid that movie altogether. So
it's topical.
It's not. Anyway, remember, the family that watches horror movies together stays together. See you next time, folks. Bye.